Hey everybody, welcome to Hit Rewind. This episode we're diving back into the, what do you call it? What is this era called? It's not Golden Age, it's not the Silver Age, it's like the Bronze Age of movies.
I don't know. Like I would characterize it as more of like a metamorphosis or an innovative time.
Yeah, I feel like it's not New Wave because it's a French thing. I can't remember. There's a word for this era. Most of it is just, the 70s, but we keep still dabbling a little bit back to the 60s. Originally, I was going to go try as much as possible, go in chronological order, like, to stick to a certain year. But time doesn't really permit for that much. And at the same time, we try to find stuff that's thematically connected in a way, which eventually I'm sure we'll be like, fuck this, and abandon all of it. So basically, this is and this is probably going to be a two-parter because there's at least another run of these movies I don't really like the phrase blaxploitation. This feels like something fucking snooty white critics said back then,
I was going to say, actually, yeah, the history of that term is that it was kind of coined by a more racist subsection of critics who, like, if black people make their own movie, and we have to quarantine it off from, like,
Right.
The proper established films.
Well, it's not just racism, though. It's just snooty classism because as soon as blaxploitation starts to fade out is when they start to say hicksploitation. That's when all the Burt Reynolds style movies, all about good old boys, goo, goo, goo.
Yeah, and then there's Canadian exploitation. I think it's knack exploitation.
Yeah, I love I love that whole genre. But for us, this is more examining movies that kind of broke ground, kind of in drive-in cinema, I guess, if you want to call it that, before video was really a thing, or cable. Lower budget movies that kind of broke through in one way or another, either at the box office or critically or something major for someone's career.
Or a word of mouth kind of thing.
Yeah, Night of the Living Dead and our last film that we're discussing, Assault on Precinct 13, aren't necessarily black films. They just happen to have a black lead. It's a universal story. Whereas, where he was trying to find, each director was trying to find just the best actor. Whereas Shaft and Superfly are really trying to cater to an audience that was completely ignored.
Yeah, and there's definitely connections between Assault on Precinct 13. It's actually Precinct 9, but, that's another thing we'll talk about later. And Night of the Living Dead kind of have a different approach to how they have black characters, where, like you said, it's more about the movie. It's not about making any sort of statement, although Night of the Living Dead definitely does have that statement in there. I mean, the police are, the villains at the end of the movie, killing a black man. So, there's some obvious subtle conversations about race, whereas Superfly and Shaft very much are like, no, this is these are black characters, and this is a black story.
So, Night of the Living Dead, obviously notorious for two different reasons. One, because it changed the whole idea of zombies. Before this, it was more connected to voodoo, and they weren't coming back from the dead and eating the flesh, especially not the whole eating brains and stuff like that. Of course, now we've had 50, 60 years of this style of zombie movie. No one's ever gone back to the old way.
I remember when I was younger, and I thought that this version of zombies is what there was. So I went back to go watch Bela Lugosi, White Zombie, and then watch it. This is terrible.
Yeah.
It's just a guy laying on the floor, getting up, and then just doing whatever he says. It's like a voodoo thing.
And the other thing is that it instantly went into public domain, which was extremely rare for a movie to do that. And because of this, it was one of those you would constantly see brought up in other movies. And it was constantly playing at drive-ins for the next 15 years, grindhouses, on cable, any horror host kind of thing would show Night of the Living Dead. And it's probably the best of those public domain movies because they usually were, kind of questionable quality. There's a few legendary ones like Carnival Souls, but nothing compares to Night of the Living Dead.
Which could be part of why it was successful, just because it was everywhere, because it didn't really have any copyright.
Yeah, I'm curious. I want to look into the history of this. And I want to know, was Night of the Living Dead a hit when it first came out in theaters, or was it just because it was, you didn't have to pay a license? You know, if you had a print, fuck it, it's yours now.
Yeah, that's something that I don't know if you can ever really find a proper answer like that, because much like how movies in this day and age can be memed into success.
Yeah. Except Morbin time. It's Morbius.
Exactly. Where like people can confuse, you know, popularity with success. Just because it was everywhere doesn't mean that it actually made any money. But those records are probably going to be really hard to find.
Yeah. But it's one of those where you would find it everywhere. I remember the first time I had seen it. I want to say it was around 95, 96. A company had put out a double tape. One was the original movie, and then one was filled with spoofs. Most notoriously, Night of the Living Dead. And then I believe it was, I saw a version of it on DVD where it was like called high tracks, where people would get high and you see them in the bottom of the screen. You could hear them laughing and getting high while watching the movie. I've seen it riff tracks live, and this viewing is the first time I've seen it in its full, uncut, unmodified form since the 90s.
Hello?
Yes? What?
Oh, I thought we cut out for a second.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, where were we at?
Oh, I was saying this last viewing is the only time I've seen it, probably since 95, 96, where it was the original version, no added on, no colorized, no spoofing, no, riffing or anything.
So that's weird. I didn't know that those existed. Like, because the only one that I grew up with was just the film itself.
No, okay. Yeah, it's because it's public domain, and people, if they alter it in any way whatsoever, then they can copyright that version.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So that's why there's so many different versions of these. I believe Criterion did eventually put out like a pristine Blu-ray of this, where they found the original print, they cleaned it up, it's in its proper format, and, lots of extras from people who were actually involved.
One would hope, but I'm going to look that up later.
Yeah.
Because I just have like a basic DVD, which doesn't have anything special on it.
So in general, though, I think I have to give it some credit for being what it is on like a $50,000, $65,000 budget. But some of that acting is really stagey and stiff. And it feels like I'm watching, a stage play, which makes sense since it's so one location. Dwayne Jones really does outshine everybody else in this movie.
That's the thing that's interesting. In the same way that like Orson Welles kind of innovated acting in movies where everyone's just talking very stiff and like it's a play. Orson Welles acts like an actual person, a character, which is kind of in stark contrast to people that he's, acting off of. And I kind of felt the same way in this one, where he was much more charismatic and interesting to watch than everyone else who's just kind of shambling through it.
Yeah, and just those fucking idiots. Every single last one of them, except for him, fucks up so bad. I can't believe the whole disaster at the gas pump. Oh my god.
Yeah, and it's something that's definitely improved on with other Night of the Living Dead or, Dead of the Dead movies, where a lot of those things just like there's always the falling apart of those movies, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't really have a way to make it make sense in this one, so everyone just is kind of dumb.
This is blasphemy, but I'm going to go with the 1990 version. I just think it's as, Romero produced it. It's as close as to what he wanted to do if he had the proper money. Great special effects, great actors, and the pacing, everything, it just looked better.
And that's another thing. Is that the one that Tom Savini directed, or did he do a version that
No, that he did the 1990 remake when Tony Todd, from Candyman is the lead.
Interesting. I've seen this.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good. I've never seen any of the other remakes. The rest of them seem like they're just hollow cash-ins. It's a public domain name, or the co-creator, the co-writer, whatever it is, of Night of the Living Dead. I think his name is John Russo. He will sell the rights to anybody who wants to fucking make it. It's like a 3D version, an animated version. As long as he gets his paycheck, he's fine. Shit all over his legacy.
Okay, so I kind of don't remember because I watched it a while ago. What was the cause? Like one of the stated reasons of the zombies, was it sunspots? I have a vague memory of that.
I don't.
Assault on Precinct.
No, that's from Assault on Precinct because he's in the office talking about sunspots making people go crazy, but he's just kind of throwing shit at the wall, just playing around. No, there is, I do not believe there is any explanation whatsoever. It's funny how they basically act like they have it all wrapped up at the end of this movie, but of course, because of the success, he got Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead going, and so is Dawn a continuation of Night of the Living Dead, or is just another zombie movie that he wanted to make? I've never known if those are connected or not.
I don't think any of them are connected. I think it's just different stories of this apocalypse.
Okay, yeah, because you kind of see the beginnings of it in Dawn as it builds, and I can't imagine that many people would have been surprised and thrown off by the zombie thing when there's a 10-year separation. Dawn and Day make a lot more sense because by the time you get to Day, it is full on apocalyptic. There's like 2% probably of the civilization that's still human, and you can kind of see a natural progression over the 7 years. I don't feel that between Night and Dawn.
I would even say that Land of the Dead is also a good progression. Whereas, like, all of the survivors, well, not literally all of them, but a huge swath of survivors have kind of started rebuilding.
Yeah.
All kind of being packed into one space.
Yeah, but it is a really interesting place to watch start, and you do need to, I think, as a horror fan, or no, fuck that, as a film buff, you need to see Night of the Living Dead at least once, even if you're not a horror person.
Yeah, we're probably going to be blasphemers on this one, yeah, but I don't know if there's really much you can get out of it, unfortunately. It's not that deep, it's not that complex in terms of its themes.
Yeah.
And it's a classic for sure, but it's definitely one of those where it's like, I get it.
Yeah, well, it's
not going to blow you away. It's not like if I were to recommend like Dawn of the Dead, there's some, like, for me, there's gravitas to that.
Yeah,
It's like, ooh, I need to watch this with you. I need to see your reaction to this.
Well, I think Night of the Living Dead and Assault on Precinct 13 are also connected in the fact that they're so clear cut. There's no complications, and it's easy, it's so accessible to any audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where Shaft it's based on a series of novels. Oddly enough, I didn't realize it was written by a white man. This whole time I thought Ernest Tinyman, the creator of Shaft, was a black writer. And so that's why the story, I think, is a little denser and a little more complicated, I think, than it really needs to be sometimes. But right around this time, detective movies are in. They are doing very well. They're cheap to make. And so, I can see them going, well, these detective novels with a black character as the main character, or whatever, are doing well. Let's try this. And I'm sure at some point they're probably like, well, who are we gonna get? Well, we have Sidney Poitier, and there wasn't a lot of black people. Yeah,
that one guy.
Yeah, there's not a lot to choose from back then. So what's great about the 70s is that it created a whole generation of new lead actors. And the sad part is, 6 years after Shaft, the whole genre has dried up and none of them can get jobs except for like Italian ripoff movies and like fifth build. That's the sad part about all of it. But I think Shaft is stylish as hell. It's got a great score. And it's unlike Superfly, it looks like a real movie. The money is there. It's not a huge budget, but it looks good. It has a great finale, and I love Richard Roundtree. He's so damn likable.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, again, that's different about Night of the Living Dead and Assault on Precinct 13, where we're getting into these next two movies. This is much more of like, we're dealing with the complications of racism while at the same time telling your own unique story out of this. So it's a detective thriller where the main character has to deal with the complications of being black in America and, running up against the law, against expectations, against racism, etc. It's not, if I'm being honest, I don't think it's as good as Superfly in that regard. And you said there's a white writer that kind of makes sense to me now, looking back on it.
Uh-huh.
But that doesn't take away from what I think is ultimately a great movie.
Yeah, I think it's like the third or fourth time I've seen it now. And it's funny is, it's one of the longest lasting franchises, and no one talks about it because he does return in the 2000 in a cameo, and then he has a much bigger part in the 2019 part 5, part 6. But I think people only remember the first movie and maybe the second. But I mean, we're talking, it goes the big score, Shaft in Africa, and then they found that they could make back in the 70s and early 80s, there was TV movie of the weeks where they would repeat characters once a month. So Shaft had a brand new movie every month for the 1973-74 season. So there's a total of 10 movies right there. And he got tired of doing it, and they really watered down the format to make it palatable for 70s TV. Gotta get those old white people. So
I can definitely see them. There's definitely an aspect of the original movie they probably downplayed.
Yeah, it's still a good detective show, but what made Shaft so special was its style and attitude. And they couldn't even shoot in New York. They shot it on like backlots of Los Angeles, and it is not the same in this. And I know it's cliche, New York is a character.
Yes.
It's almost required that it needed to show you a different version of New York that they hadn't really shown. This is where New York started to struggle because, suburbanites, that was starting to be a thing. People were moving out of the city and vacating a lot of the neighborhoods. And that's when you get a lot of emptiness, a lot of ghettos, a lot of, 42nd Street is no longer showing Broadway plays. They're now becoming grindhouses. This kind of shows you the very early days of that. And I thought that was really interesting because I'm fascinated with New York from like 1968 to 84, 85 before they started cleaning it up.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing too about these two movies as well, is that there is a more sort of communal spirit to these stories. Where it usually like involves, more than just the main protagonist kind of doing everything themselves.
Yeah. Then we have the whole history and you have
like the driving force. It feels like in these movies there's a lot more going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot more of like the world around them.
Yeah,
there's just a player in it.
Definitely world building in both of the films. That was like it doesn't just this is the beginning of the world. No, it's existed for a very long time. They have a history, not just with him in the police force, and this is just one of his many, many cases that he's had. It's like he has all these connections and relationships that he has built over the years.
And that's why I think for me, I really enjoyed Superfly, is that feeling of like there is so much history in this part of the world that we're telling.
Yeah,
that makes it feel more alive. And this one does it well too. But I'm sorry, I really like Superfly stuff.
Okay, I think Superfly actually this time around was my least favorite, but what I will give deep respect for is that it feels like I'm watching a documentary.
Yes.
It's not as stylish as Shaft, even though I'm trying to remember. I think Gordon Parks Sr. is the director of Shaft, and his son is the director of Superfly. And he was mostly known for photography. And so he brings some of that element to what he's filming. And there is a couple stylish sequences where they literally just use frames, a single shot picture and kind of.
Yeah. In montage, yeah.
Thank God that song is good, by the way. That Superfly song is, or Push Your Band.
Yeah, Curtis Mayfield knocks out.
Yeah, it's a fucking great song, and you're so happy to hear it over and over. By the way, if you love that song, Beastie Boys covered it on, or used samples of it on Paul's Boutique. It's fucking amazing. But yeah, let's
go back to Shaft. I was
in
the conversation there.
Yeah.
I mean, anything else you want to add to it?
Oh, no, that's why I was kind of slowly segueing over to Superfly.
Okay. Let's see. If there's anything else I want to say about Shaft, I do want to see. Yeah. So, like the main theme that like everyone noticed the theme to Shaft.
I was singing it. Were you singing it?
Actually, sorry, what?
Were you singing it as it went on? Every time I go, shit, you back.
But I think there's very few people, myself included. I didn't see it until for this podcast.
Oh, okay.
It was a very different tone than what I was expecting. I was expecting more like comedy. I didn't know that this was going to be a more realistic sort of, comedy.
Yeah, it doesn't start to get funny until Samuel Jackson does not a remake, but a reboot, I guess, of what you would call it, because it still exists in the same world. And a lot of the humor just comes to the fact that he's so fucking sure of himself, and not in a pompous way, an arrogant almost way, because he is tired of dealing with these fucking fools, and he just knows how to charm his way to a lot of situations. He's a great detective.
Yeah, that was the other thing too that I thought was really interesting about this movie, especially for maybe not for the time period. Maybe I have to watch more movies like that, but a lot of gangster flicks or that involve, mafiosos of some kind.
Yeah.
Usually gangs are depicted in a very particular way, kind of like Assault on Precinct 13. They're basically just like mindless zombies that just like enjoy violence. It was kind of refreshing to watch, a trio of gangs all kind of at each other's throats. But we actually like stop and talk. Like there is an ethos. There is a reason why they do what they do.
Yeah.
They're not just mindless. Like they're very much, they have a goal that they want. They're not just going to kill someone because just because. Like, it makes sense for them.
In my opinion, I think it's a great franchise, and it's really sad that the third one tanked so badly that it destroyed the franchise. It's Shaft in Africa, and people thought it was a mistake to take him out of the city. I think but if you watch it, we're going to get to it eventually. I think it's a really important story about him searching through, his roots or whatever, and just thrown out of his environment. He's a fish out of water, and he's got to like get his bearings. I mean, it could have turned into like a James Bond kind of thing for him, where he literally could be thrown anywhere. So Superfly, he doesn't have the charm. He is fucking grit, driven, and I'm not as compelled, but the balls to fucking tell you a story from the viewpoint of a drug lord during this time period, bold, just absolutely bold.
But also, what I find so fascinating is that by any normal metric, Superfly, or I guess Priest is his name, would be a leading hero. This is not the case. His sort of like the way he talks is very unique, very different from everyone else around him.
Yeah.
And generally that would be seen as like he is exceptional or he is better than people around him. He is not seen that way by other people. That almost holds him back. He almost seems kind of untrustworthy.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the remake of this? It came out 5 years ago, I think.
I have not.
It is very good. I think it's better than this one, but it doesn't have the rawness that this has. That one's much more flashy.
Okay, yeah, that's partially why I really enjoy it. I really like movies. What was it, Section 9?
Yeah.
Semi-recently?
Yeah.
That was last year. But I really love movies like that feel very much like I'm walking into this movie.
Yeah, it feels like I'm
around seeing it as the character sees it.
Yeah, it looks like it was shot on like 16 millimeter. That kind of gritty film quality. The lighting is all natural. Sometimes like his clumsiness in the fight sequences does seem a little almost borderline Dolomite.
Yeah.
But it's his performance that drives all of this, and it's a shame. And I've seen documentaries on blaxploitation. Look, I was obsessed for a while, where he was basically rejected after this because he's mixed race. So a lot of the audience kind of just said, "No, you're not really one of us." But also the fact that Paramount had to pick up the sequel to Superfly because Warner Brothers got cold feet after the negative reaction of Superfly. A lot of people, a lot of activists were angry because they were showing a black man in a negative light. And yes, it made money, but there was a lot of controversy.
That's interesting. I can see that. I do think that it is about him trying to get out of that life. I mean, yes, he is a pimp and a drug dealer, but that's the point of like getting out of that. And it kind of takes a different kind of version of that, where his reasons of getting out are just because he has like a bad case of ennui. He just feels depressed. He needs to get a major change in his life. It's not because he feels as though his life is in danger on a constant basis. It's not because he had a bad interaction somewhere that led him to like, I gotta get out of this life. It's just more like there is more out there for me somewhere. And I just like what I'm doing now just isn't sustainable for my mental health.
Yeah, I believe the sequel is he comes back to America to help a friend who's like the mob's after him because he fucked up a deal or something like that. It was pretty good. I've never seen the return of Superfly, which was like 18 years after this, without Ron O'Neal, what's the point? Why do it? If you're going to continue the storyline, don't do it like that. Go get Ron O'Neal. He was still alive. He was still acting, you fools. Sorry.
Yeah, there's not a lot really to get into. What I enjoy about it is kind of its simplicity and of its style. And you said the person who directed this is mostly known as like a photographer?
Yeah, so it's the son of the director from Shaft. So it's Gordon Parks did the first one, and Gordon Parks Jr. did this one. You know what's sad though is that he only did 3 movies, and then he was killed in a plane crash while doing location shooting. Damn it, location scouting. And so it's bizarre that his father is so much older and outlasted him by decades because of this horrible accident.
Yeah, it's just I really enjoy this style of filmmaking. Its attention to those sort of details that really make you feel a part of the world. It feels like there's nothing to hide here.
Yeah,
like every sort of imperfection is shown, and that's just kind of what makes it pop out more than other movies do.
I wonder why it is that so many genres have this thing where a couple movies break out, people get really crazy for it, and all of a sudden everybody's making them. And of course it burns people out, but it never really made its way back the same, like slasher films. Think about after, like Halloween and Friday the 13th made so much money, everybody was making slasher films. And people got burned out, they died off, but they've come back so many times. Why is it blaxploitation films? Damn it, I fucking said wasn't going to say that. But that style of movie where every once in a blue moon you'll get an homage. And that's it.
Well, no, see, it did come back very briefly, but the movies that came out, so basically around the time Get Out became a huge success, a lot of people tried making movies like that, like a racial horror.
Okay.
And they flooded the market and they all tanked. And it just kind of killed the market immediately.
Okay.
Like, what was it? Antebellum. And there was one about dormitories that was really bad. Yeah, there was just kind of an influx of really bad race horror that kind of killed the momentum.
It's kind of like sword sorcery movies. You're going to get a couple of gems and everything after that is shit and it dies again for another 15, 20 years.
Yeah, pretty much.
The final film of our group is my favorite. I have seen this maybe 20 times. Assault on Precinct 13 is an absolutely jaw-droppingly great film that was made for nothing. When I looked up the budget last night, I was guessing 300,000, maybe 350. Something about the same cost as Halloween. No, 100,000. How the fuck? How did he afford Panavision? 35
million. That's what I was going to say. Like, when you said 300,000, I was like, yeah, that's pretty much what I would expect. That's insane.
Yeah, it's got a couple of actors at that time had been kind of known. Austin Stoker had already been the co-star of Battle of the Planet of the Apes. He had been in Coffee and a couple other films. I assume right there you got a quarter of your budget eaten up by him. I wonder if just everybody said, how long is the shoot? 2 weeks? Fuck it, I'll do it for scale. I mean, that's what it seems like.
Yeah, I don't know how else you could do it other than just like skimping on salary, but
yeah. And the fact that the action sequences not only are great in their choreography, but also how they're staged and filmed for the camera, I almost feel like he must have workshopped all of this first to save money. And, how is this going to look on camera? How does it look with this lighting? Instead of sitting on the set for the whole day, burning through, trying to get it lit right, they already knew.
Yeah.
But, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they definitely do some tricks to really stretch that budget in a way that does not take away from the intensity of it. Like, it's still an amazing movie.
It's one of these, it's all about tension. It's not that complicated. It starts as the police stop like this gang meeting, get a whole bunch of people killed, and this slow build. They want revenge. They're wandering through the neighborhood looking for targets from guns. By the way, they stole guns that were like a transport going to another police station. The tension of them just driving around is insane. Is it
looking for a reason?
Yeah. Looking for someone and the music. God damn it, John Carpenter, you fucking genius.
Yeah, just driving by, having the gun out the window and like slowly putting the finger on the trigger and then letting go and just keep going. It's like, oh God, what's going to happen?
Yeah. And I'm the fucking shocker. And he said he regretted it. I don't know. I think the fact that he had the balls to not only shoot the girl, but show it like that is so shocking. That it tells you right then and there, no one's safe.
Yeah, and also just to kind of bring you into like the mindset or the lack thereof of who we're dealing with.
Yeah, and well, he said that it was inspired partially by Night of the Living Dead, and that he didn't want those killers to have personalities, to have dialogue, to have any sort of human emotion. That they're almost like mindless drones, just kill.
It's kind of a zombie movie, really.
Yeah.
Zombies with guns, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a gorilla song. But a lot of it.
Also, sorry, go ahead.
But I'm good. Go ahead.
So one of the things that for a movie like this that to work, what you really need to do is think about every little detail. You know, like whenever you watch a movie now, like a horror movie, it's like, why don't they just use their cell phone?
Yeah.
Very few movies still to this day don't think about that. This movie, the first half of it is all explaining every single reason why no one is going to come and help them.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like exhausted.
It's so well, it doesn't even, you don't even realize that that's what it's doing.
Yeah.
It just feels so natural to the way everything is happening. It's like, oh yeah, the phone shut off at this time because there's going to be a transfer in like a couple hours after that. And so like every little detail as to why it can't happen happens.
Well,
it all just happens to coincide at the same time in the worst possible time.
Yeah, well, the fact that he's new at that place and they have to kind of give him updates of what's going on is a very natural way of doing exposition. And the fact that John has always been very lean and mean, cuts out any excess in the dialogue. And when he does have lines, God damn it, those are some good lines.
It's just distilled to the bare essentials, and when things don't need to be said, it's not said.
Yeah,
like the villains, they don't speak because you don't need to. Everything about them you can tell just by their physicality.
That's why the remake doesn't work, because it's overly complicated. There's so much dialogue. Every other word is fuck, 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 fuck. You know what I mean? And it becomes white noise, and having stars hurts it. You know, Lawrence Fishburne, John Leguizamo, Ethan Hawke. It almost felt like it needed to be another tiny budget movie with no names.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so impressive. And everybody in this, not just Austin Stoker is amazing. Darwin Jostin as Napoleon, fascinating. I love that character.
Yeah, just every detail is obsessed over that just makes this work, because that's what you really need. Is you don't need, in the middle of the last half where it's just all basically action. The last thing your audience should be thinking is, wait, why don't they do this?
Yeah,
because that will immediately kill any tension in the movie. And at no point did I ever think that they were making a mistake or making a leap of logic that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
and like in their desperation, reaching out to a criminal to try to help them, that makes sense for the moment.
Yeah, it's also building the characters as the movie goes along instead of stopping the progress of the film to have those kind of scenes. It's literally as they're moving, they're developing the characters. It's amazing. Like, it takes 5 minutes for Napoleon, when they introduce him in the jail, transforming him. By the time he's on the bus, you know who the fuck he is.
Yeah.
And I know, I just thought everybody in it was just really good. The only thing I think was kind of silly, and I can't believe he allowed it to happen, unless I'm confused over what was going on. There's a sequence where they're having all the gangs out in the parking lot run back and forth. And so these guys run this way, and these guys run this way. I was like, well, why did they need to run this way when those guys where are you going? Why are you overlapping each other?
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, that's kind of like, that could be a budget thing, and maybe those details to get lost. Maybe it's the sense that they are kind of just like animals, just running on instinct, just kind of going all over the place, trying to find entrances, or they're just, or the idea of like, why are they doing that? Like, you don't know, makes it kind of more frightening, but it does look a little silly.
Yeah, it's just a truly fantastic film. It was not a hit here. It was barely released, but it was embraced overseas, and that's where all the critical acclaim from, and kind of word of mouth started to spread, but it took so fucking long. I remember it was on VHS, but it was lost for years. I kept looking for it and looking for it and looking for it. And New Line Cinema licensed the rights when In the Mouth of Madness was coming out. And so they released, I believe they licensed that and Escape from New York. And so they slap promos for In the Mouth of Madness on the beginning of those. That's a really long time to wait for Assault on Precinct 13 to be seen again.
Almost 20 years.
Yeah. And I really do think, though, it was like guys like Quentin Tarantino talking about it, and John Carpenter being embraced by the next generation where this started to get word of mouth. It's still not that, I really don't think it's like a commonly seen film.
I mean, that's kind of John Carpenter's entire career, though. Like, as far as I know, when looking back at his work, most of his stuff was not critically acclaimed or did well financially, but it basically raised an entire generation of filmmakers.
Yeah, because basically all he really has is Halloween, Fog, Escape from New York, Christine, Starman. So those are his hits. Everything after that tanks. And of course, The Thing in the middle, the biggest. What was wrong with you people? Why didn't you go see this movie?
And They Live. Pretty much all of his work gets the recognition it kind of deserves very late in his life.
Yeah. I still can't. I can't embrace Ghost of Mars though. That I'm tapping out, dude.
Nobody can. I've tried so many times. I'm one of his biggest fans, and I have not sat for the entire day.
I saw the drive-in, and I remember when it was over. I looked over my friends. I go, guys, I'm really sorry. John Carpenter, seriously, he's just phoning it in now. That sucked, dude. You know it's not a good movie when you see a pairing of that with American Outlaws, a mediocre as hell Western, and you're like, yeah, American Outlaws is clearly the better film.
Sorry. Even vampires, like, I defend. I think it's a pretty damn good vampire movie.
Yeah, there's some clumsiness, but there's some clumsiness in there. Daniel Baldwin's performance sucks, and I think the end stunned us a bit.
I'm just saying, even though, I can acknowledge it's not great, but, there's a lot about it that I really like that's unique or special to that movie specifically. But Ghost of Mars, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, well,
I don't think he was even there.
He takes siege films, the siege theme after this, into a lot of other movies. A lot of the locked in a location, something's trying to destroy us, either it's from the outside or inside. If you think about a lot of it, The Fog is about being trapped with the pirates outside. The Thing is kind of a siege, but it's all inside. Prince of Darkness and Ghost of Mars. I think that's about it. But it feels like that's a theme that he was really interested in.
Yeah. And I feel like this one kind of had the same problem of Halloween. And Assault on Precinct 13, has the same problem with Halloween. Is that when people try to remake or want to continue the story, they don't know what makes it special.
Yeah.
And they always fail.
Yeah, it's so rare.
With Halloween, they completely missed the point. The killer is not someone you empathize with or even understand. He is not related to Laurie at all. That's what makes it creepy. So, trying to make a whole lore about how they're related and that's why he wants to kill her is stupid and makes no sense.
Yeah.
The remake of Assault on Precinct 13 didn't do nearly enough footwork to try to explain why the situation is happening. And they even go the opposite direction of over-explaining things that don't need explanation. So it's just, I don't know what it is about John Carpenter. It seems like people like the aesthetics of what he makes, but just don't understand why it works.
Yeah, I'm curious. What do you think? Do you think eventually the gang would have found the police station and did the Cholo thing on them? Or it just happenstance? They just happened to follow that guy there. I wonder what their target ultimately was. I thought it was they were going to get back at the police.
That's definitely part of it. I think it's a colliding of circumstance.
Yeah, that seems like eventually
they were him directly to a place where they wanted to be.
Yeah, it's eventually they were going to find something like that to destroy, because I think they just wanted all-out chaos. And if the cops were the ultimate goal, hell yeah, let's just do some damage on the way.
Yeah.
All right, so that is it for this episode. Thank you very much, Kersey.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a great one.
All right, that is everyone. Have a good one.